Yeah, we're 6 minutes in, so let's go, because we actually have quite a bit of content ready to be shared with you all. So yeah, just very briefly, so I'm Francesca, and there's also my colleague Camilla here on board. We are here representing IWLEARN. We both work in the communications team of IWLEARN. Actually, it's us, so it's not, yeah, we are the communications team of IWLEARN. And yeah, we set up this webinar based on some of the requests we received in the past about, there was quite a bit of interest in related to media and how to address the media and how to maybe get your project, up in the media. So we have collected quite a few great speakers that can enlighten you on how to do this better, out even, some tips on how to write a press release, some tips on how to get it out there, and some options that maybe you haven't considered that you could use in terms of pitching your story to the media and where and how, etc. So I'll keep this introduction very short. I just wanted to share with you a little bit of the housekeeping rules, and then I'll let the experts talk. So yeah, this is the 7th of the webinars related to communications. So we have a few more to go in this field. Actually, we're going to ask you at the end of this webinar which topics you would like to learn more about. And then we kind of then select speakers and everything according to your requests. So in theory, like, try to mute your microphone so that at least we don't hear like a dog barking in the background, or like some sirens or ambulance or something running through while the speakers are presenting, so you don't distract them. But of course, you can unmute yourself to kind of ask questions. We will actually do it in a way that each speaker will present, and then at the end of their presentations, you can unmute yourself and ask your questions, so we don't forget them. If we leave them at the very end, maybe we've already forgotten what we wanted to ask. The session is being recorded. So for those of you, this is kind of one of the most common questions we get. Is it being recorded? Yes, like all the sessions, they are being recorded. And all the PPTs that the speakers will be using, they will be uploaded to the IWLEARN website. I will surely send an email after this webinar to remind you where all of these are located. And engage. This is for you. These series of free webinars. We do them for the portfolio, for the International Waters portfolio. So make sure you use this time. We have excellent speakers with us today. We have people with like huge knowledge and incredible experience. Use them, make the most out of it. So indeed, feel free to ask, drop questions in the chat. There's also like a Q&A section if you wanted to be very precise, but also since there's not too many of us, the chat will also do. And try to be, maybe raise your hand. So if there's more people with one question at the same time, then at least we try to organize the questions better. Then the agenda is very simple. So we're going to discuss with Hilary now from FAO the theory about media. So the why, when, and how, which is going to give you lots of practical tips. Then we're going to have some best practices and experiences from the field with Jane here connected with us from Nile Basin, Andrew also from the Nile Basin, and Matias from Unesco Montevideo, who's going to connect in a little bit. And they will share also their own tips and experience from the project side of you, from the project side, and then more Q&A if there's time. And just as a bonus thing, in this particular webinar, we're going to start a new trend. Let's see if this works. I mean, trend, something else that we haven't done in the previous webinars, which is to give you a certificate of completion in case you also submit an article based on the tips and knowledge that the speakers will share with you in this webinar. So if you do that within a month, let's say, so by Christmas time, if you manage to submit an article to us, to me and Camilla, and we say, yes, okay, this is kind of decent, then you will receive a certificate of completion in case you want to boast about it on LinkedIn or just keep it for your own personal purposes. I don't know. Yeah. Here's some instructions. I also left some instruction on the website, and I'll remind you about this. And this is it. I'll now let the floor to Hilary. Hilary, whenever you're ready, you can start sharing your screen and present, unless there's questions even now. But no, I think so. Let's go ahead with the real content.
Okay. Hello, everyone. It's lovely to have you all here. Let me just share my screen.
Perfect.
Is that all right? Let me just drop
Mm-hmm.
that. Hang on, and there we are. Okay, is that okay?
Yep. Yep.
Okay, so first of all, I was asked to do this, so a little bit about me, just to tell you who I am. I've been more than 25 years as a journalist. Started my career on local papers, 7 years in Brussels, working for Bloomberg and then the European. I was 3 years as deputy business editor, so I've done all kinds of subjects. That was for the Independent on Sunday. 4 years as a correspondent in Rome, mainly working for the Sunday Times and Times and the New Statesman. And then I joined the UN. So I was 8 years as a communications consultant for the World Food Programme, IFAD, but mainly for FAO. And in that time, I've sort of done just about everything from web, media relations, and 6 months spent in partner countries, 6 months in Sri Lanka after the tsunami, in Haiti, back and forth been many times to Haiti, and also in Kenya. Then I came back to London, back to journalism, and I worked for the Nigerian television channel Arise TV when it was a startup for a few years. 3 years as a digital producer and writer for CNN for their website and also working on their TV. And 3 years as the UK correspondent for the South China Morning Post. I'm now back at FAO as a communications consultant for the Jeff-funded Common Oceans Programme, which is all about the high seas and areas beyond national jurisdiction. So we work on spreading the ecosystem approach to fisheries management in these areas and looking at cross-sectoral cooperation. Next slide. So the first one that I really want to stress is how can the media help? So if you getting your story in the media, it can raise coverage, media coverage, it raises visibility and credibility of your project for donors. It creates awareness of the issues involved that your project's involved in. It can be actually an agent of social change. You know, the more people hear about things, the more they think about things, the more they can change their behavior. It helps get your project's viewpoint across to governments, most importantly, and then, of course, to the wider public. And it's always generally nice for the team to have their work recognized by someone else. And then a point I'd like to make is that I think sometimes people think that journalists are going to come for them and cause them trouble, but actually journalists are not your enemy. And I think especially those interested in the kind of IW, international waters work and the issues involved. So move on. Then I'd like to say what it's like being a journalist, because I think to see things from the other side, it's tough being a journalist these days. 120,000 journalism jobs lost in the UK where I am and the US alone over the last 2 years. There's far more communication specialists and public relations people, so that they now reckon there's one journalist to every 6 people working in communications, which means that journalists get quite a lot of approaches, and some journalists I've spoken to say they're receiving hundreds of pitches a day, like hundreds of emails. Their wages are down, their workloads up, and the majority now, the days when people had their beats and they were staff and they stayed on the same newspaper forever has long gone in many places, and most are freelance. They have to produce constantly to tight deadlines. And then perhaps the last thing to be reminded of is that they have to sell the story that you tried to give them. They have to then go on and sell that to one or maybe more editors. So they have to sell what you've told them. So that's good to know. Next one, do your research. So before going to any media organization or trying to pitch any story, it's very important to research the media environment. So what outlets are there? You know, this could be, are they local newspapers? They could be trade journals or magazines. For example, for us, we look a lot at the fisheries press. They could be environment focused, like some of the new online sites like Monga Bay might be of interest, though they need to be looked at. Then find which journalists are covering sort of transboundary water issues or the environment or climate change or whatever you're working in. And have a look to see if they've covered similar issues in the past. Then look, when did they do it? Because if they did it like just a few days ago, there's no point in trying to pitch to them a similar story immediately afterwards. The best thing is how many, the best way to get media coverage is to have friends in the media. So I would always recommend trying to find ways to get to know journalists. For example, where your base is or a local press club. Are there events being on where journalists might come that you can meet them? If you're in Nairobi or Geneva, one of the big UN centers, do they have any UN press briefings they might turn up to? So use, is there a local pub where they gather? And then once you start looking at the kind of journalists you'd be interested in talking to, it's good to build a list of those journalists. Many ways to find out these days how to get in contact with them. I mean, the sort of generic, the email that they're working, the publication they're working for, you can get that by just calling up sometimes. Maybe contact them on Twitter or X, as it's called now. LinkedIn is another way. But anyway, you sort of have to fish around to try and get a contact for them. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. Give me a minute. Sorry, apologies. And then just while the radio is always often overlooked, and chat shows can be a really good way to get your project talked about. And the same, I think, with podcasts that are sort of overlooked. And podcasts these days, there's plenty of websites to search, what kind of podcasts and what subjects do they cover. And so, they might be a good pitch, whether they wanted a speaker, maybe somebody from your project who's happy to go and talk. And then I think often don't forget when you're trying to look at media and the research, don't forget the producers, especially the planning producers for television and both radio, because they're often the people that set the agenda. And so they're good to know because they can then sort of slot you in when they've got time to do a story on the subject that you're trying to promote. What kind of story? Next story. So there's lots of different types of stories that the media, they're all called stories, but they presented in different ways. There's the news story, which is, that can be things like if you've got a new report come out, it's a kind of like this happened, the classic news story, new projects that you're working on. Then there's feature stories. They're often a longer read and they maybe tell stories of people. Interviews, you can have interviews, and I'll come back to the feature stories in a minute. Interviews can just be sort of straight question and answers with somebody from your organization or project. Opinion editorials, which I like a lot because you can have control over them and write a point, stick to a couple of points. We did this one on the left here for Aijuka for our project. Aijuka is a tuna trade publication, and so we managed to get that in. We were pleased about that. And then just also, it's often good to think you don't have to be the story. It doesn't just have to be about your project, but if someone's writing about the area that you're working in, it's nice to maybe see if you can just get in the story and have a couple of quotes along with others. Next slide. I found this and I thought it was quite a good way to explain. People often wonder what's human interest stories when communications people talk about human interest or whether you're playing it straight. And here they've just given an example of flood resilience in New Orleans. So I won't read it all, but it sort of shows the difference between the two. So maybe, I don't know if I'll give you a minute to look, but if you wanted to
Yes,
come back, and look at that because I think it's quite clear. Okay. So there we are. Move on. When to pitch, that's very important. Timeliness is everything. So try and be aware of the journalists that you're trying to pitch your story to, what their deadlines are. Is it a daily publication, a weekly publication, or a monthly publication? For example, if you've got a women's project, growing oysters, and you'd like to get it in a women's magazine, you might find that they're planning 2 or 3 months beforehand. So as with the research, find out what their deadlines are. Don't send when the reporter's likely to be busy. Now, this could be because a huge story has just kicked off and everybody's busy in the newsroom, but it could also be things like don't send a press release on a Friday afternoon when everyone's going home, unless it's a Sunday paper, and then it might be a good idea to send it on a Friday afternoon because they're just starting to get down to work. Be aware of the time zones. For example, if you want to send something about, a proposal for an article that's happening in the Pacific Islands, don't send it Friday morning European time because they'll all be going to bed in the Pacific or they'll be waking up. But anyway, you know what I mean, sort of one way or the other. Don't send for events that have already happened. So don't say, oh, last week we did this, because there's nothing more likely to send a journalist to sleep than to see that that it's already happened, and they won't take you seriously. And then often we like to, especially at the UN, we like to have our days of celebration days, which is always a good time to try and peg an article to. But if that's the case, then think well ahead yet again, because there's no point in contacting, say, like today's World Fisheries Day, and you contact your local paper, like yesterday. I mean, give them plenty of lead in so they've got time to plan and prepare for these stories. What type of pitch? Next one. So this is lots of often people get a bit confused of what kind of things you send to the media. The standard press release is one that goes out to usually goes out nearly always to more than one media outlet. So you'll send it to 5, 10 people, and it can be a news story. It's usually, something that's announcing something, or that's giving some results from a report or something. But that goes to many people, and you send it out and you wait to see if there's any interest. Then there's the sort of the one-to-one email pitch, which can be quite effective for trying to pitch feature stories and ideas. When you do those, they're usually sort of written a little bit more informally. And sometimes I find it's good if you've got a story if you've written your own story about your project and maybe put it on the website, you can send them a link and say, hey, we just published this on our website, wondered if you'd be interested. If you're just pitching to one journalist, just do it, keep it one at a time to try and build trust. And so that let them think that maybe that, it is an exclusive, like you're only talking to them. They're not going to, horror of horrors, see it in the rival paper the next day before they've even written it. I would always suggest don't waste journalists' time by trying to sell things that are not that interesting. Try and be a little bit confident that actually I would like to read about this in a newspaper, and it's quite an interesting subject. And then finally on this one, I would suggest try to avoid copying lots of people and colleagues when corresponding. Journalists don't think in the same way always as people that work for sort of big organizations, and it can be a bit off-putting. I mean, only start to copy if you're setting up interviews and other people need to know. So do that on a need-to-know basis. Writing and sending the pitch. Okay, this is a little bit more detail on sort of how you do it. The headline, whether it be the subject line in your email or the headline to your press release, is really important. So keep away from all kinds of jargon, say it very simply, and avoid acronyms except for well-known ones like the FAO or UNESCO or whoever, you work for that people will know about. When you're sending a pitch, try and be clear and just in a few words, couple of sentences, what it's about. And then sort of add a couple of context paragraphs, like why is this important? For example, if you're looking at aquifers in Sudan, you could say that, there's been a big problem with water shortages, or, put some why this project's working and set it into, like, as I say, into a context. If you send an article idea to journalists, I would suggest always be ready for immediate interest, i.e. you get an email straight back. We'd love to do something about this, and be ready, have somebody there that can talk to them, or just be prepared to wait a month because they might not get back to you, but it doesn't mean they've necessarily forgotten you. It might they might put it on a list of prospective articles, and when they've got some time, come back and ask you more. Always answer any follow-up questions quickly and promptly. I think that's like really a golden rule with the media, because they might have an editor shouting down their neck, well, what about this? What about that? And their time, they've got short attention spans because of the nature of the job. Always be ready with additional information, maybe have a list of concisely written facts about the project that could be useful. And then if you don't hear anything, you send a pitch and you get a blank and nobody replies. I wouldn't be pushy. I wouldn't sort of like immediately say, hey, did you get this email? Or just following up. Give it a little while, leave it for a few days or a week or something. And then you can sort of maybe follow up with a call, which can sometimes be quite a good tactic if you've got the phone number, or send another email. And then finally, never send an AI generated article or pitch, because I've been speaking to a lot of journalist friends and they say that when they see they can tell it's AI, they're all learning how to recognize AI generated stories and it goes straight in the bin, and that can do your reputation a lot of damage. Next one, be demonstrative. I think it's always good to have something to show the journalists. So take them somewhere and show them something that's interesting or they might not have thought of before. And this works for all types of media, print, and especially radio, and even more especially television, where they'll be looking for some good images. If they're there at your project, I would advise always, because a lot of people kind of like get worried about who they're going to talk to, and let the journalists talk freely with people and don't worry about it, because they're getting their story, they're doing their job. And if you've taken them to a place and it's all very interesting, it's very unlikely that they're going to turn around and do anything that will be not sort of favorable to your project or your organization. And then just finally, this is action. It's always good to have action to film if they're sort of moving things, unplugging, I don't know, polluted rivers, or, if there's some ambient noise is good, especially for radio, running water, that kind of thing. So always be aware that sort of action noise is good for for broadcast media. Next one, sorry, preparing for the interview. So always make sure that you've absolutely lined up who from your organization or project will be talking to the media to give the sort of meaty established quotes. I would always advise sending the journalists correctly spelled names and titles in advance, because there's nothing more boring than having to come back as a journalist and check the names and spellings. And it just makes it easier for everyone. Context is everything, so prepare the background to the area that you're working in, the kind of project and the problem. So they have 2 or 3 good contextual paragraphs. I might have said that before, but I'm sort of reiterating it a bit. Work out the key messages, as we often, the point you really want to get across beforehand. So if you're having an interview, you'll know, the person who's being interviewed will know when they get the chance to sort of slip that in, even if that's not one of the questions they're asked. What else can I say? I would say try and be conversational when you're talking to people. So talk as if you were talking to a friend, because that's the best way to get good quotes and good sound bites. People always sound a bit sort of stuffy and false when they try and have sort of pre thought out questions, answers. Don't I would never advise asking for questions in advance unless the journalist offers, and sometimes they do, and that's great. But if they don't, sort of don't insist, because you might put journalists off. And then the sort of rule for this, the final rule, is remember that the more you help the reporter out and make their work easier, the better it is. And that's quite a golden rule in sort of press relations. Final slide here, just looking at the media ecosystem, because now with online internet, it is an ecosystem. And so you've got these different local, regional, national, international, but one doesn't rule out the other. So you might talk to a local radio and a local newspaper, but that could be the thing that gets picked up in a national paper or maybe even international. If the article if it's been published already in a local newspaper, then you got something ready at hand that you could then maybe send to a radio producer or a podcaster and say, hey, are you interested in this story that so and so Daily News published the other day? And that might sort of raise their interest more. International news agencies are always very good if you can get them, like Reuters or AFP or even Bloomberg, who I used to work for. And a lot of them, especially in sort of the non-capitals, Western capitals, they'll use local stringers. And these people are often very, very clued into the local media scene, and they can also be very helpful in getting your story out to sort of the international press. So they're good people to try and get to know. Then I think the final one is just to really sort of reiterate, the more you're out there, the more your name's out there in the sort of on the internet. It means if somebody's searching or if a journalist is searching to write an article about the subject that you're involved with and your name comes up, they might get in touch with you to do an interview or get you into their TV program or something. So, you know, especially with algorithms and things, the more you're out on the internet, the more you will find that you might come up and people will want to talk to you. And I think that's it. That's sort of a very quick and brief summary of some of dealing with the media. And I'm happy to take any questions if anyone's got any. If there's anything you'd like to ask.
Yeah, thank you, Hilary, for the great presentation. Feel free, people, to unmute yourselves and ask questions directly to Hilary. She gave us a lot of really good tips. Maybe you want her to expand on. So feel free to unmute and ask. Yeah, Eleonora.
Thank you, Francesca, and thank you, Hilary, for the presentation. Hi. Just a quick question, and apologies if you already mentioned. I wanted to know, based on your experience, what is the right time frame and the right advance to send a press release to journalists about an event or about a specific topic or a publication, which is important?
Yeah, it does depend on when the thing's happening. So if you're doing an event, well, give them advance, so a week or 2 weeks, maybe not, you know, not months ahead. It depends on the size of the event, but give them a sort of couple of weeks, especially if you want cameras and people to come, you know, if you're expecting television or something. But then if it's something that's just happened, I mean, I don't know how often we get that with our sort of projects and the work we're doing, but if something's finished, and obviously you send it as soon as it's finished, you know, as soon as you can. So it does depend on the thing, but for events, I think give yourself quite a good time to, because you can then give a follow-up call and see if they're interested in coming, you know. So yeah, that's my advice.
Thanks so much.
Super. Thank you, Nora, for the question. Stefania.
Hi, I'm Stefania.
Ciao, Stefania.
Hi, from VII. I'm a communications specialist. I'm Hilary's colleague, actually. And I wanted to ask Hilary, so do you have your list of go-to journalists or editors or
it's starting.
outfits
I mean, I
that
haven't been doing, I'm starting with this project. I obviously, you know, I've got sort of old contacts and people that I could go to for other things, but for some of the sort of more technical work that we're doing, I'm just starting to build a little list of people. Yeah, takes a while, as you know. It's quite it's always good to have a good story. One way to actually to build the list is to start with a good story, and then when they you know, if they use that, then you can come back to them again and say, oh, hi, you know, thanks for using that the other week. Are you interested in this? So, yeah. But I mean, you can obsess over media lists as well. But yeah, I do try to sort of start looking for who might be interested and get their details.
Thank you, Hilary and Stefania, for the question. Adipati, you have a question as well?
Yes, thank you.
Hello.
Hi, Mrs. Clarke. I'm
Hello.
Adipati from the CFI Indonesia.
Hello.
Thank you for your presentation, which is very interesting, seeing from your approach. I have a question. When do you suggest is the time to upload stories to have a further reach? For example, we have a monthly mailing list of the project. So should we release it on the end of the month, of the start of the next month? And also for social media outreach, is there a better time for upload the stories, like the end of the week or the start of the week, or or what time? On morning, so people can see it first time, or at noon when people have the more relaxing time? Thank you.
Yeah. So for your first question, what was it? When to send like newsletters and things? I mean, it's a difficult one, but I mean, I always think it's quite good to send it early in the week, you know. But it does depend. Yeah, I would say do it sort of early in the week and in the morning, because it's kind of like a fresh new thing to set people up. And then on the social media, I don't know really. I mean, when do you look at social media? If you want the maximum impact, do you watch it when you lie on your sofa when you come home and have a look? Do you catch up? You know, I think that's probably early evening seems to be quite a good time, or on a Saturday when people are scrolling. So, you know, it's sort of, yeah, it's not, I don't think there's any definite time. And it's also cultural factors, you know, it depends where you are in the world and people's lifestyles. So, yeah, anyway. Thanks.
Thank you, Ripati, for the question. Thank you, Hilary, for the answer. Luca, you have a question as well.
Thank you very much. Good morning. I had a question which is very much specific with the slide on writing and sending the pitch. So I want to know more in detail how many words would you suggest to write, and also how would you suggest to write the particle? Like, I would like to know your structure to
Yeah,
actually
that's a
write the particle.
very, very good question, actually, and perhaps I should have put more about that in the slides. I usually do it sort of do a good, well, it's not a headline, it's a, you know, a subject in the subject line, like, you know, something that will catch their attention a little bit, rather than, you know, too much sort of bureaucratic language. And then 2 or 3 sentences, you know, like, hi, Judith. We've got I'm writing from whatever, if it was me, I'd say I'm from the Common Oceans program, and we might have a, you know, story you'll be interested in involving sort of blue shark fishing methods. You know, this is, as you know, it's been an ongoing problem, and, you know, that kind of thing. And just keep it fairly formal. And then just don't put too much, but say, you know, if you're interested, if you've got a link to a web story or something, or just say, but if you're interested, and then this is what we can offer you. So we, you know, we might be taking a group of journalists out to sort of visit a site, could be something to get their interest. Or you could send, we've done this story on the web, and if it's well written, they might just decide to practically copy it, because that does happen, especially for like low resourced publications. And yeah, I think, yeah, I mean, I don't know if anyone else has got any other ideas who's done this, but yeah.
I also had another question related to the salary. How would you negotiate your retribution for the work?
That is an extremely good question as well, because this depends on where you are. If you suggested that in the UK or the US or to a Western country, they wouldn't like it. And I know in many, many countries, it can be that they do, you know, you sort of like pay for get an article in. I wouldn't do it in any case. And that's my advice. Even just give them, because just say that we don't pay, you know, because the whole point of the journalism is that they're writing about you because you're doing something good or something interesting, or you have a subject matter. So, you know, I mean, when journalists try and ask for money, it's a difficult one, but I would definitely not accept that and say, look, don't worry, we'll find someone who'll do it for free, because, you know, we're working to, you know, improve the environment, and we're not, you know, we're not in the game of paying journalists. Yeah.
Publish the
Thank you.
stories, no? Yeah,
Yeah.
because that happened quite a bit.
It does,
And
yeah.
I have one question, and then we move on to Jane. Does anyone have questions in the audience? If not, anyway, we should have a little bit of time at the very end. I was thinking, Hilary, so you were mentioning that it's good to have a press release, let's say, already published on a website, and then, you know, you pitch it to a journalist with a link to the website on where the press release is already, or the news piece is already like published. So that's a good practice. It doesn't look like, oh, it's already out there, so why
Well,
would I
no,
want?
we just say we've just published this. Yeah,
Okay.
I would do it. I mean, it really depends, you know, FAO, if it's a big story, like launch of like a multi-billion, you know, multi-million-dollar project and things, they can sometimes put out corporate press releases, which is that's not how it works with our project. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So if it's just something that's more kind of of interest, you know, it's a subject that's interesting rather than the big news, then I think it's quite good to have it sort of like ready written on the web, because it just means that it's easier for the journalists as well, because it's half written for them, to be honest.
Yeah, okay. This
Yeah.
is okay,
You
so
know.
kind of like take inspiration from there and then adjust it, and like the kind
Yeah,
of
then
shows that it's already
they
like
tweak it, or they
newsworthy.
might want more information. Would you like an interview on this? Yeah. So, yeah.
Super. Okay, well, thank you very much, Hilary, for your time. I think an experience that you shared with us. So if you don't have any more urgent questions for, right now, then we can wait until the very end. And now we move on to our next speaker, Jane. Would you like to introduce yourself briefly and share, of course, the PPT that you're prepared for this webinar?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Jay.
I'm very excited to be part of this webinar. And I look forward to, I appreciate this opportunity to share my experience. And thank you so much, Camila, for, offering this opportunity. My name is Jane Baitwa Kyomhendo, and just for the record, I'm a former, I formerly worked for the Nile Basin Initiative, so I'm speaking to you today as a former employee. I'm a communication professional, and I'm very much enthusiastic about communication that fosters relationships, motivates stakeholder involvement, and promotes sustainable change leading to improved lives. So I have more than 20 years experience working for national and regional organizations. I've also collaborated with regional global partners like the EU, the World Bank. I've worked for the EU and GIZ. So I'll focus my presentation. I'll share my experience from the time I worked for the Nile Basin Initiative, and then my story will be around a specific project that I worked with among the many. So just a brief introduction about the Nile Basin Initiative. It's an intergovernmental organization, 10 Nile Basin countries, and it was established in 1999. The main objective really is to promote cooperative management and development, or how the countries can come together to protect the Nile Basin, and then use the waters for win-win benefits and to promote regional peace and security. So I worked for the Nile Basin Initiative for 12 years, and all this while telling the Nile story from shared challenges to shared benefits. And while we did a lot of things as far as communication is concerned, one of the main pillars for our communication effort was media engagement. And this is the topic that I'll be focusing on, since this is the purpose for this webinar.
Jane, just a second. I wonder if you want, you can put this up on PowerPoint on the presentation mode, if you like, so we see it in big screen. If not,
okay,
there you go.
That's fine.
Super. Okay.
Yeah.
Super. Great.
Yeah,
Thank
sorry
you.
about that. Yeah. And
No.
so as I was saying, I'll be focusing on one project to share my experience working with the media. And this is the 80 megawatt regional Rusumo Falls hydroelectric project. I chose this project because this is one of NBI's flagship investment projects. It's a flagship project because it was jointly identified, jointly owned, and financed by three of NBI's member states, that is Burundi, Rwanda, and Tanzania. So this project is very important to me, or very important to NBI, because it had been on the drawing board since the 1970s. And it was not until March 2017 that there was a groundbreaking ceremony. And as I speak now, the project is almost fully operational, and the countries are already, enjoying the benefits of cooperation, including power that is shared among them, and then jobs created, among others. So in doing this work about the media engagement around the regional Rusumo Falls hydroelectric project, a number of people were involved. We had the NBI technical team, communication officers from the ministries in charge of water affairs in those three countries, that is Rwanda, Burundi, and Tanzania, because we wanted to also bring them on board. And anyway, we always worked with the communication officers within the countries, because it was not easy to be everywhere from the Secretariat in the 10 countries. So working with communication officers within the ministries in charge of water affairs was one of the key things. We also worked with GIZ that sponsored the event, and MICT, that is Media Incorporation and Transition, that helped in running the training. So this is how we pitched the story. As I said, we started off by, we said, let's start by holding a media training. And the purpose here was to bring the journalists from the region together, not only the 3 countries, but all the 10 Nile Basin countries, to get some training on how, to write their stories. But also, most importantly, was to be able to visit the project site. And this was in December 2016. And as I said earlier, the groundbreaking ceremony was the following year in March 2017. So during the training, yes, the journalists were able to speak to the different technical people, but also the journalists were equipped with the facts about the project. They were exposed to the real benefits of cooperation, and they had the opportunity to talk to the people and therefore develop human interest stories with testimonials from the community. And in doing this, we collaborated with local and regional outlets, as well as international ones like the Water, Power and Dam Construction magazine. How did the journalists respond? Well, one of the things that I really felt was very good was that the stories that came out were written from different angles. And following this kind of interaction, the media training, visiting the project site, there was a lot of interest that was aroused as far as this project is concerned, and there was a lot of follow-up from the journalists. So when it came to the groundbreaking ceremony the following year in March, it was quite easy to, to get the journalists to write about the story, but also when we had the press release sent out, it was easy for them to kind of follow up what was going on, since they had heard about the project already. So what worked well for me at that time was the project visit was very, very good. The real benefits of cooperation were easy to see at that time. And the journalists were able to collect testimonials from the community. The other thing that we did at that time was to visit key media houses. And this is something that the Nile Basin Initiative, we always did when we were in a particular country, because visiting the media houses, we felt was very important to introduce ourselves to the editors who are always within the media houses and not coming out to see what's going on. But at the same time, they're the gatekeepers of the stories that are being sent in. So meeting with the editors within the media houses, key media houses in a specific country was very important. And so for this particular case, we were in Rwanda and we visited some key media houses in Rwanda. And the executive director at that time was able to, to talk to the editors. And so in a way, introducing ourselves to the editors or introducing the Nile Basin Initiative. So the stories that were published by the journalists within their media houses, it was agreed that they would also be shared via NBI's social media platforms. And so this was able to increase the reach of the story, of the information, but also the journalist's work was kind of, in one way or the other, being appreciated and so shared on the NBI social media platforms. So one of the challenges that I can think of is language, because of the so many countries within the 10 Nile Basin states. And so this, we were not so sure, we were not able to, to say that everything is accurate as expected. But all in all, the final result is that it was great coverage. It raised interest in the Rusumo project, as I could tell from the various media inquiries and the number of stories that were churned out, especially whenever there was an event or something related to the project. So what would I do differently? Before, as I was about to leave the Nile Basin Initiative, we had started to do a media content analysis. And this was very important for us to identify the gaps, but also it will enable us to develop some corrective or constructive narratives that promote Nile cooperation, depending on what we are reading in the media. So this is something that I thought was very, very good, but as I said, I think I did it for only 1 year. So this is something that I would, put in more effort if I were to do this again. That is, engage a company at least to help us with media content analysis. I would like to share some practical tips for engaging the media. I know Hilary has talked about some of these, so I will not dwell so much on some of them. But one of the things that I found very useful was to have an all year round media engagement activities. And within this, we had media training annually to equip the journalists with facts about specific issues. We had press work related to events, and this is a host of things that one could do. For example, send out a curtain raiser press release before the event, maybe 1 week before the event, so that you're already preparing. You're preparing the journalists about the upcoming event. And then we had the press briefings before the event. We also had an editor's breakfast meeting, depending on the type of event. If it's a major event and we really want the editors to also get to know what's happening, I would have an editor's breakfast meeting and then have a press release at the end of the event. But also we always try to make sure that we issue this press release on the very day of the event. One thing about the press release, that the feedback we got before was sharing a press release PDF format, but then later on the journalists told us they would prefer a Word document. So we always sent a Word document. And the other thing that is very important is photos for print. They would love to have the photo to go with a press release. If you can get a sound bite for radio, or if you can get something for TV, then that's also very good. But make sure that if it's a photo, it's well captioned, and your press release should have something that is quotable. It should not be, and make it brief as possible. Yeah, be on the lookout for any further questions from the media as far as your press release is concerned. And then media awards. We did start to organize media awards on an annual basis. And this was in a way to appreciate the journalists for their reporting. And I must tell you, this was a very good activity for us, because from the time we started to organize media awards, we registered a lot of interest in the work of the Nile Basin Initiative. So this worked in two ways, because one, we were able to raise the interest of journalists among journalists about our work, and we were able to have our stories more put out there, because we got to have a community of journalists that we could easily reach out to. So these that won the awards later on became part of our media database, and we continue to follow up with them. Media monitoring, tracking coverage after an event. It's important that you track coverage for your event. This could be daily. We did it daily, and it was in-house using, for example, Google Analytics. But also, as I said earlier, media content analysis, really to dive deeper and see what is happening, how are people reporting, and what are the comments that are coming out. And this, as I said, could be outsourced. For us at that time, we used a company that is called Ipsos to help us do media content analysis. So the other practical tip is to maintain a media database. And this is important to share knowledge and information on a regular basis, but also to help set up interviews with officials with these particular people that you have in your database as they request. Then there is partnering with media networks. We did partner towards the end of my tour at the Nile Basin Initiative. We did partner with a media network called Water Journalists Africa. One of the presenters whom you'll hear from today is a member of that network. And these are journalists that are interested in water-related issues. And so it was very good for us to partner with them. We worked with them more on the groundwater projects that the Nile Basin Initiative is implementing. So yeah, this is another tip that I would like to share. If you have some media networks within your region, within your country, it would be a good thing to partner with them. And then understand the subject matter. Granted, as a communication person, I was not able to understand the technical to understand everything that the technical team was doing and explain it as they did, but at least to make myself understand the subject. And this is important because then I would be able to identify the gaps in the reporting. And then this would also go feed into the training that we are having to be able to bridge that knowledge gap for the future reporting. I appreciate journalists for good coverage. Yeah, maybe a phone call, email, text, or just having writing to them through their social media accounts. That is also something that you could do going about practical tips to engage with the media, and then casually check in just to show that you care. So that's it that I have to share for today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jane. That was very good too. Like it was full of practical tips, which we all love because they're practical. So we can, of course, put them into practice straight away. I love the media, the prize that you gave to the awards that you gave to journalists, and the fact that you created a community out of it. I think that's an excellent idea. But I'll leave the floor to people. Does anyone have? We have like 3 minutes for questions for Jane. If anyone has any specific question about how she managed the Nile Basin initiative and the project that she mentioned, or we can save them for later, for after Andrew spoke as well. But yes, Adipati.
Yes, thank you, Mrs. Jane, for your presentation. And I congratulate you on your project, which looks very successful, interesting, and certainly useful. I have a question. Within the project, we naturally use a large scale of events. So we create an event, and one is way to promote the project achievement. So how do you engage the external parties, particularly the international media networks and also the foreign NGO? How do you build that? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Adipita, because one of the things that we did, we had what we produced a product communicating the benefits of cooperation. And so this product is something that we presented or we shared with the media, but also we did have a very brief bit of this product. And so we were sharing it from different networks, for example, from social media, the website, but also mailing it directly to the different journalists that we had in our mailing, in our database. So yeah, so communicating the benefits is very important, especially when you have more than one country, like the Nile Basin Initiative. So the countries need to know what are the benefits of cooperation. Why should they continue with this? And so the only way you can do that is using the journalists. At least that is one of the big ways that you can do it, using the journalists, working with the journalists. So yes, we produced this product, benefits of cooperation. We had smaller chunks about it, introducing it, but also sharing it on our website and sharing the link with the media so that they can get more information about that, and being ready and available for any questions as far as the product is concerned or the content is concerned.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you, Adipati, for the question. Anyone else has any question you would like to ask? You have 10 seconds. Eleonora, go ahead.
Thank you. I try to be very quick. Just a curiosity, because you were mentioning that one of the main point, let's say, it's also to manage the media database. I was curious if you can answer to this. How do you manage it? I mean, meaning, do you privilege quantity, or you prefer to have a small database that you can control better, keep update, and then ensure a good relationship with the journalist?
Yeah, so we did maintain the media database in-house. And the way we developed it was from different ways. For example, when we invited people for media training, then those would include in our media database. When we invited journalists for an event, we would include those in our media database. And so this we kept, it was a very well-maintained database, And so it was also we were also able to identify which journalist is interested in what, which media house do they come from. And each time we had something to talk about, or we wanted to reach out to anybody, we knew where to go, where to find them. And this is how we developed, we kept on growing it and maintaining it. Yeah, invite journalists for an event and add them to your database. The training, add them to your database. Those that benefited from the media awards, add them to your database. And yeah, that is how we kept it, we maintained it.
Thank you. So, and despite the dimension, let's say, of the database, since you were always in regular contact with them, you managed to feed this contact.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks so much. Thanks a lot.
Super. Thank you, Jane, and thank you, Nora, for the question as usual. Now I would leave the floor to Andrew. If you would like to share your presentation and discuss with us your view from the Nile Basin and how you supported the comms efforts there. Super.
Thank you so much. I'm trying to get my... good day, everyone. My name is Aijuka. I hope my screen is clear.
Yep, all good.
Okay, and I'm privileged to have won at least an award during the course of my reporting and my journalism work, and I'm grateful for that. So that's why I had to indicate that I am an award-winning climate change reporter. But of course, I also serve at Infonile, which is an arm that is Underwater Journalists Africa. And of course, I'll be telling the story as we go on. And so my main passion is basically to promote underreported water stories across the Nile Basin, of course, while enhancing video journalism quality and, of course, doing the capacity building throughout the region. I've been a journalist for quite some time, and it's until 5 years back when I switched and I decided to have a niche. And so that's one of the things that I would love to also elaborate in this presentation of mine. It comes to a time whereby, as a journalist, you need to find a niche. You could be everywhere and actually be nowhere. You can imagine I started journalism in 2009, and it is only, I think, in 2020 or 19, close to COVID, closing out. That's when I embarked on, becoming a water journalist. So I really emphasize that whenever I am in a gathering, at least where I know we are like-minded. So what is our story? I'm here in two capacities. First, as Andrew Aijuka, the video journalist and environmental journalist, but also as the office manager of Infonile. And of course, Infonile is a media development organization. And just like how I said, we are an arm of Water Journalists Africa. And our main role is that we are trying to bridge the gap between scientists and researchers. So as you can imagine, for us as Infonile, we have chosen our niche to be basically science. And so in that way, we try to skill the journalists, but also try to skill the scientists, in that where the journalist is not available, at least a scientist or a researcher is able to write a press release for himself. And this we do through trainings, and of course, as I will go on trying to explain. But of course, we encourage more across-border kind of reporting, because we are in the Nile Basin, and we know that every country has a different way of reporting on this critical river. So that's why we encourage more of cross-border but collaborative reporting. And I'm so happy to see Jane here. We have worked something with her, which I will present on as I go on. So in this, we have been able to train over 250 journalists. And of course, in these 250 journalists, we have been able to produce 400 stories. These are stories related to biodiversity, water, and environment. And of course, we have had 10 cross-border investigations. So these are stories basically talking about one theme, but looking at it in different perspectives from where the journalists are coming from. If it is a Ugandan journalist, probably they have a Ugandan version. If it is a Kenyan journalist, probably they have a Kenyan version. But the way we do our work or our story at Infonile is that we identify a theme. And in this case, it could be about maybe pollution around Lake Victoria. And so once we identify that theme, we make sure that we put out a call or we reach out in our rich network that we have formed over time. And we get the interested characters, which could be journalists or even sometimes scientists, because there are times where we put out calls and we need both scientists and journalists. And so in this, after that, we try to take them through a week of training. It could be a week, it could be 2, it could be, a month, but it is according to how much time we have and also how much funds are available. And so through that training, we make sure that the training only doesn't stop there, but we continue with the mentorship program until someone is able to publish the story that they have produced. And so this story, we encourage journalists to publish these stories in their local media houses. And then after that, we bring them together in a cross-border kind of way, or in an omnibus kind of way, like bringing, so many stories in one. And with that, we also sometimes create actionable and interactive maps, but also have data visualizations for simple edification of those that might be looking through the stories. And so we make sure that we know we are working in the Nile Basin, and so there is a problem of language. So we make sure we translate this omnibus story into 5 different languages. So we do the English for the English speakers, we do Arabic for the Arabic part, we do Amharic for Ethiopia, and then we do Swahili also for the Swahili speakers, and then French for the Francophone countries. So basically that's how we do our things. And this is a photo of when last year we were given a check, having won as first runners-up at climate change reporting, a media organization. So our story is that we have been fostering a collaboration between journalists and scientists for quite some time, because we realized that reporting on science issues is quite hard for journalists, because you're coming from a humanity kind of background or orientation. Reporting science sometimes can be really challenging. And so what we have done is that we have come up with what we call a co-production. So we invite a journalist and a scientist to work together. In this way, they could be looking at maybe the scientist's research or the studies he has done to formulate a media story. And then also the scientist can be helped to be able to at least create posts for his social media, but also in times where the journalist is not around, the scientist is able to present at least a press release that can be taken on by the media houses. And when we train people, we don't just stop from there. We make sure that they produce, these media products, and these media products are somehow, further taken on. So for example, we make sure that they come also on a webinar like this, where there are journalists and scientists across the Nile Basin, and then they try to share their experience and also talk about the story or the communication piece that they have been working on. And in that way, we have seen that there's a lot of interest, not only in water reporting stories, but also science reporting among media houses, especially across the Nile Basin. We have gone ahead and formed a tool to make sure that at least if you are in need of a scientist, maybe you're writing a water story, you need an expert to help you on that as a scientist, or as a journalist. We have put up a platform which is free, which is called Nile. IWLEARN is a platform basically where it's more like a pool where you find journalists and scientists. And so here you can easily type in water, and then it will bring you all the experts or all the journalists that are interested in water, because those are some of the things that we ask them as they're trying to open up an account, which is for free. And so you're able to get experts across the Nile Basin, and you can connect with them through their emails, because the message that you type through this app goes straight to their email, which shows more seriousness, because over time we had a problem of scientists not allowing WhatsApp messages or even Facebook. They found it creepy. But if something came through via email, someone takes it to be more serious. You will excuse me just a second. So what has been our experience? Our experience over time is that we have found out that there are organizations, let's say like NBI, where Jane worked before, and we have had also Water Aid Uganda, we have had Join for Water. We have found that these organizations have beautiful research, have beautiful studies they have done, but in a way these studies have remained on the shelves. So what we are doing of late is we are trying to connect to organizations like those ones, and we say, how can we make sure that at least with your study, we get journalists from that particular area where you did the study from, try to equip them with some of the tools, like on how to report on some aspects like water, like environment, like climate change, and then, you know, give them small funding, since most media houses don't usually buy science stories because they are into more of advertising and entertainment. And so science stories somehow tend to derail their business. So that's why we usually give a small funding to make sure that the journalist is able to do extensive and good work. And in that way, they are able to bring back these stories, you know, through their media houses, published in their local media houses. So in that way, you know that the research or the study has both been consumed by the technocrats or by, you know, the upper echelon, but also through the media houses that have produced stories on this research. The community down there also has gotten a chance at least to have a bite of, you know, this research or study. And we have done this, and we have seen over 75 science news stories being published. That's after working with the organizations or initiatives like Nile Basin, like Water Aid, like WASH, you know, GIZ, and most recently we just worked with Join for Water, which had just done a scoping study around the Swag catchment. And of course, what we got there was remarkable. People were really happy to see that at least the research is being reflected in their media houses. But we also did visualizations. So somehow, somewhere, you know, for some people, visualizations tell a better, more story than the so many words. And so we are happy to also extend this training of how to formulate data, but also interactive maps to organizations, especially if they are trying to pitch some of these things to media houses. One major story or one major question that we usually find is, how do we get now this research or, you know, these studies to the downer man there? What we are doing at Infonile is that we are doing this through community exhibitions, and we have tagged them taking back the stories to the community. And just like how I explained previously, that we basically train journalists, mentor them, and then help them publish, and then get this story that they have published, you know, and take it back to the community where they have reported it from. And so in that way, you're able to obtain feedback, but also as an organization, you're able to have, you know, an engagement of all the stakeholders. For example, in the photos, as you can see, this was even a hotel. You can imagine we didn't go even to the place down there, but this was a hotel. But we made sure we invited all the local leaders. In Uganda, we have local councils. They are mostly our lead here. So we called upon all the local councils, most of them, which is now you're tackling policy, we called cultural leaders, now you're changing mindset of people. We called upon the journalists themselves and fellow journalists who reported, about this event. So as you can see, it's a circular of communication and knowledge. And at the end of the day, you want an informed society taking informed decisions. And so with that, friends, I hope I have highlighted a few things, but maybe key things to take from my presentation is first and foremost, let's engage also private sector, encourage journalists when you're trying to have these studies done. For example, if it's about maybe water, can we engage people who are into drilling, the private sector that is into drilling, so that when you're bringing back these stories to the community, at least there is a financial element in it. The media houses can buy it, can buy the strategy, in that they know at least they will try to tell someone who is coming to exhibit, who is maybe a pump or something, to pay something for the exhibition table or for the exhibition space. And in that way, you see that private sector is in the story, but also it's also making some bit of profit from engaging with the society that could at the end consume their products. So it is kind of a technical approach, but that's how we are also engaging the private sector. And of course, the collaborations is key, and that's what I would advise for now or present for now. And in case there are any questions, I'll be glad to take them. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Andrew, for the thorough presentation. I'm afraid it was excellent, and thank you for sharing it with us. But I think because of the time restrictions, we might move on to Matias. And then if there's any questions, those questions can be dropped in the chat, if that's okay. Just because it's already 3:18, and we said we would finish by past, and we do have to also share a quick poll with you all and maybe a group photo at the end. No, we will have to do also a group photo at the end. So Matias, if you're ready for your presentation, that would be great. And then we have literally 10 minutes, but like on the dot, Sorry about this.
Well, thank you. Thank you to all of you. My name is Matias Ponce. I am the Regional Coordinator of Communication, Public Engagement and Partnership of UNESCO for Latin America and the Caribbean, currently working from UNESCO Montevideo Regional Office. I'm going to talk about the experience of Guarani Aquifer Project, an international project that integrate efforts from 4 countries, Argentina, Paraguay, Brazil, and Uruguay. It was a project supported by Jeff and implemented with the Development Bank of Latin America, for Latin America, CAF, and implemented by UNESCO with the 4 countries. Regarding the background of the communication approach of this project in particular, the idea it was to strengthen the regional cooperation, integrate human rights perspective in the communication of the project regarding the use of water and the access to water as part of human rights and directly related with SDG strategy in 4 countries. My role was to be the advocacy leader for the Guarani Aquifer the execution of the project. Regarding communication goals, the first one was increase the citizens' awareness regarding something that you cannot see. I have a short video to share with you. I don't know if we have the time, but we produced a short video trying to explain in layman terms something that you cannot see. an aquifer, groundwaters. Try to work in behavior change regarding the topic of the aquifer, and a lot of misinformation related with the use of aquifer and the cooperation of regarding the 4 countries on this topic. And we had a very big challenge, 4 countries with different political perspective regarding the aquifer, with 4 countries with a story of cooperation on the aquifer, but with as you know, different perspective regarding different actions and different contexts, despite to be so close as like Argentina, Brazil, Uruguay, and Brazil. Regarding the core message that we produced to explain the aquifer, the first was to find a story, try to find a human approach to explain the aquifer, and for that reason we produced it. I'm going to share just 30 minutes of this short film that we produced. Let me just share 30 minutes just to listen the voice that try to find for the aquifer.
If we could hear the voice of the aquifer, what would it say?
Cortes de energía, problemas importantes en un país que está desolador, ¿no? Hace casi 80 años, convirtiendo calles y avenidas en oportunidad se ha visto absolutamente accidentes. Las altas temperaturas afectan la actividad.
If water remains, how does it remain? The aquifer system needs voices for sustainability. It needs strong arms to embrace its course of life. It needs governments, institutions, scientists, traditional peoples, indigenous peoples, peoples who cooperate for its waters.
La relevancia del acuífero surge en un contexto
Sorry, now I am not sharing the presentation, but the idea it was to integrate in layman terms, how an aquifer works and relevance to integrate different perspective, and especially the voices of rural community. Are you seeing the presentation? Yes. In all of the contents that we produced, we set a human-centered angle with women farmers and groundwater knowledge, trying to integrate them in the story. And it was very difficult in my case, try to traduce this technical concept like an aquifer that insists that you cannot see in the ground, in the field. We try to integrate to hydrologists and field visits, and try to listen them with when we spoke with local actors, and thanks to that we were able to explain in layman term and try to share a special of community pride and scientific empowerment regarding the aquifer, and that the aquifer is part of the story of indigenous people in 4 countries. That was translated to a social media campaign in X, Instagram, and Facebook, and with different communication pieces. Regarding media pitch, we try to find to pitch stories in high-profile media, also from a perspective of from human stories, and tailored outreach to local and international outlets. Also, we prepare infographics on social media, trying to explain in layman terms how an aquifer works, and in both languages, Portuguese and Spanish. And also, it was a very relevant part of our communication strategy. A lot of local meetings in the fields, trying to listen, to open public dialogues with local academia, with indigenous communities in 4 countries, with local private sector, and trying to create spaces for the dialogue. So in this case, our work, it was not just a work that is very relevant on social media and trying to pitch stories in high profile media. Also, we integrate a human perspective of the communication approach because it was necessary to create confidence among the four countries, because the idea is that after the project, and the project ended this year, the local committees continue its work regarding the management of the aquifer. We were able to implement more than 100 meetings in 4 countries with different stakeholders and integrating all of them in the preparation of a new strategy for the aquifer. Also, we integrated because it was a challenge trying to show how an aquifer works. So we created like an aquifer, and that was a very relevant part of our education and communication strategy in the 4 countries. We share this aquifer model in Argentina, Brazil, Paraguay, and Uruguay, and we integrate to school and students, institution, and school and high school authorities in the dissemination of this communication campaigns regarding how why aquifer is relevant for the for SDG strategy in each country. Also, we integrated a website as content management strategy as a repository of all of the material related to the project. Regarding the media experience, so it was relevant to when you are working in a project with different countries, try to cover not just in our case thinking of in international agencies, AP, Reuters, EFE, France 24. No, it also it's relevant to think in local outlets and try to integrate a local media outlet in the in your work and in your effort. So it thanks to that we were able to integrate and to pitch stories in local, national, and international media outlet regarding the project, not just with interview with authorities from 4 countries and with UNESCO experts that work in the project, also with opinion editorial, and that was something outside of the box for this kind of project, try to participate and to be part of the public conversation and try to put in the project, in this case the aquifer, in the middle of a public conversation in the 4 countries. And regarding results and impact, so we were able to integrate more than 2,500 participants in local dialogues in 4 countries, a short film awarded in international festivals regarding waters, like International Water Film Festival, and we achieved the attention of high-profile media, but at the same time also working with local media as in 4 countries, especially related with cities and small towns with and in the area of the aquifer. That was very successful. Also to mention the increased community participation in monitoring of the aquifer. It was a result of this communication strategy, thanks to integrate them in this kind of local dialogues, and also the strengthening legitimacy of regional cooperation in a hard context with very different scenarios among the 4 countries with different perspectives regarding the aquifer. And despite that, we were able to create a common communication strategy. And the most important thing for a long-term impact of this project, we were able to create a protocol and a committee of communication and advocacy that currently exists after the end of this project, and that very relevant part of the work, when you can see that in this case you have the work of a committee after the end of the project, and that they are implementing the result of the communication strategy and all of the things that you prepare. So that as a result and lesson learned and right on time. And thank you, Francesca, for the opportunity to share with colleagues.
Thank you, Matias, and sorry for the rush. Yes, I know the 10 minutes are never really, but it's okay. It's good. Thank you very much for your presentation. And in case people have questions, as mentioned, please drop them in the chat, and then I'm sure Matias and Andrew can answer them separately, if that's okay. And then Camilla, do you want to start then the polls? So we have like a few seconds for people to answer. Thank you. So you can just like 30 seconds to check what you liked the most, what you didn't like, and what would you like to hear next from IWLearn.
Francesca, the record will be available on this chat? Okay.
Yes. Yes, everything will be available, the presentation of the speakers too, so you'll receive an email from me in the coming days, like Monday, Tuesday, with everything. Please keep answering the poll. I know we are over time, but like 1 minute less. There's only 4 questions. One of them is just like ticking a box. So it gives us an indication. And if possible, as you do the poll, so we kill 2 birds with 1 stone, if you could turn your camera on, that'd be very cool, so we can take a group photo of the beautiful participants we have with us today. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Oh, this is very nice. So there's actually people behind all of those boxes. It's kind of like warms your heart up. Cool. Amazing, amazing. Okay, I'm gonna take a couple of screenshots and leave them in the chat. Camilla, maybe Sophia, if you're connected too, like we can think. Okay, let's do maybe like, so 1, 2, 3. Perfect. I'll just leave it here. I have 1. Okay, amazing. Cool. Perfect. Thank you very much for the poll. I see there's a question in the chat. Matias, is for you. So actually, if you do have a few seconds, people, of course, feel free to disconnect. But if you do have a minute, Matias, for the question which Diana left in the chat, we might as well answer it now. If you have to go away, leave. It's okay. Don't worry. We know we exceeded the time. So Diana, you mentioned you would like to know how do you manage to coordinate communication efforts when there are so many organizations?
Diana, it's it's a very good question. I think just to summarize, it's clear from the beginning. First lesson learned from this project is it's necessary to integrate from the beginning, to local communication teams when you are working with Ministry of Environment or Foreign Affairs, and from the beginning of the project they were not involved, in communication aspect, and that was a problem at the end. So I think that that was necessary for next time. And to manage all of that, it is clear to have a communication strategy with high levels of commitment from local governments, and try to find a common point of view, in the communication strategy. And with that, you always you can return to, okay, but in the communication strategy we agreed this, and we are going to work on this. It is not time to integrate and to create a new communication channel or new communication activity, because our agreement was this. That is very relevant when you are negotiating at the beginning. The second one, try to clear communication channels, but internal communication channels in the development of the communication strategy. In this case, we had from the beginning a communication committee, and we regular meetings each 2 weeks, and of course with in this case a coordinator of the committee, and that was me, but working with local focal points from different institutions, and with clear follow-up tools regarding the agreement in each meetings, with clear indicators, doing baby step, trying to solve problems that can appear in the middle of the execution of this kind of international project. But as I mentioned, clear strategy from the beginning, that will with a common point of view regarding communication aspect, and second, clear communication follow-up tools. With it could be a committee, regular meetings, maybe a platform to knowledge management regarding the communication pieces. All of that is necessary. Even a WhatsApp group, like we had in our case.
Thank you.
Okay, sorry. Thank you, Matias, for your intervention, and thank you, Dana, for your question. Maina, okay, shall we maybe close with Maina's question, and then any more questions can be asked by email at this point, or in the chat, just leave them. Yes, Maina, go on.
Thank you. Maybe a question for the future: resource mobilization for communication activities. How different projects or teams have been able to fundraise for communication activities. Thank you.
Okay, cool. So question has been noted. I don't know if Matias or anyone wants to mention something. But if not, I wouldn't know how to address the question myself. Okay, then, in this case, thank you very much, everyone. And we hope you find it useful, and talk to you very soon. Ciao, take lots of care. Have a lovely afternoon, morning. Ciao, 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 ciao. Take care. Bye-bye.